Hello and welcome back to Animated Literacy. This is part 19 of the overview and research for the program. In this section, what we're going to be talking about is the effect of stress on creativity and critical thinking, how we can reduce stress by maintaining a predictable, routine kind of an environment, and then we're going to talk about the use of Pig Latin with older students who are struggling readers because they missed out on phonological awareness. So to begin with, mention just a couple quick things about stress. This is an article that came out in the Scientific American journal Mind, and it tells us that while a little bit of pressure can improve memory, and too much pressure has the opposite effect, that it simplifies learning behavior. So when someone is under stress, there's a tendency to not be able to think critically or creatively and just go right back to doing things exactly the way they've always done them. And certainly we want children to be creative and to think critically. This is another point about stress that comes from Ian Robertson, who wrote the book Mind Sculpture. And he tells us that if stress is prolonged and severe enough that it can actually shrink the hippocampus, which is what we use in our deep down in our brain for converting working memory into long-term memory. And this was what Henry Mollison that I talked about lost. Because they've surgically removed his hippocampus from both hemispheres, he could not convert any of his working memory into long-term memory. So certainly we want to do everything we can to reduce stress. We're told that, once again, one of the best ways to reduce stress is through maintaining a highly predictable routine environment. That children who have that predictability in their lives will be able to take on stressful and cognitive challenges, while children who don't have that are going to be stuck at not thinking critically, returning back to their old habits, and so forth. So in animated literacy, we use one single lesson plan for everything that I teach. The first step in every lesson is going to be to set the context for learning by discussing prior knowledge and reading books aloud to the students. So by accessing prior knowledge, we help to have children connect the new information to the old information, and by reading aloud books, we can expand their knowledge of facts, and we can expand their vocabulary and their listening comprehension. Then after we have set the context for learning, we're going to identify and reinforce the specific skill. And in this particular lesson, we're going to be teaching Pig Latin so that we can use it to develop phonological awareness. Then the last step is, after we have directly taught the skill, then we need to apply it. And we can apply it by either having a writing activity, a discussion, or through completing a pattern song. So when it comes to Pig Latin, one of the things that we're going to talk about is secrets. Now, when I first tried to teach Pig Latin, here's how I kind of got into the teaching of Pig Latin. One year I was doing a prep time position in my school, and it was my job to take other people's classes for an hour and then give them back to the teacher. And I was on the school site 2 or 3 days a week, and then traveling and doing workshops the other 2 or 3 days a week. A 5th grade teacher came to me and said, my kids are tracking print and it doesn't do any good. They don't know what they're looking at. They can't process the sounds. So I sent around a note to all the 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade teachers at my school and said, give me a list of your bottom 5 readers. And I had an extra 20 minutes once each day that I was there. So send them to me at this time and let me see what I can do. So the first thing I did when these 35 kids arrived was ask them if they could tell me their name without the first sound. So John should have answered on, but none of the children were able to delete the consonants at the front of their name and tell me the rhyme that remained after they deleted the consonants. So it was clear that they lacked phonological awareness. But now we are all governed by our prior knowledge. And when I went through school and when I learned how to teach, I was always told, teach by the rules. Tell them the rule and then teach them how to apply it. And so without thinking about it, that's what I reverted back to when I went to teach Pig Latin, and it totally failed. So after a period of failure, it suddenly dawned on me. Here I am doing workshops telling people, start with a context, read to the children, access prior knowledge, then teach the skill, and then use the skill. And that's not what I was doing. So I went back and built an entire lesson around Pig Latin using this basic model. And so as I was showing you here, the first step was to talk about secrets. The next step was to read books. And so this is a book called Secrets I Know. And this little girl says, one secret I know is that secrets are for whispering. Another secret I know, trees make great umbrellas. And also, umbrellas make the perfect boat. So now we could talk to children about something they know that nobody knows that they know. Other books that we can use for talking about secrets are Rumpelstiltskin, who his secret was his name, and if the miller's daughter couldn't guess his name, he would take away her firstborn. And in Harry Potter, we have the Chamber of Secrets. So there's a variety of books that can be used to establish this. Now, the next step is before we ask children to actually produce Pig Latin, we want to model Pig Latin for them. And so I wrote a song to the tune of Arkansas Traveler, and this is a song that's at least 100 or 200 years old. And in the old fiddle and banjo tradition, the way songs and tunes are taught is the leader will play or sing a phrase, and then the participants will sing or play that phrase back. So we're going to use that old method, and this is a method I use for teaching all of the songs in animated literacy. So I'll play and sing a short phrase, and then I'll play it again, and when I play it the second time, I want you to sing it back to me. Ready? Pig Latin's the language of sounds at play. You can make up words that are really fun to say. In Pig Latin, pig becomes ig pay. Dog becomes og day, and cat becomes at k. Consonants are moved from front to back. Then AY is added to the stack. Words that start with vowels get YAY. U becomes UA and I becomes IA. Now, as soon as I went to teach that song to the children in my classroom, I realized that I needed another verse, that there wasn't a verse that I could put children's names into. So I wrote this verse, and after singing and teaching this verse, then we can start to plug in the actual names of the children in the classroom. So if you would echo it back to me once more. In Pig Latin, names are fun to say. You can say your name in a very special way. In Pig Latin, Sam becomes and say. Jan becomes and J, and Ann becomes and yay. Consonants are moved from front to back. Then AY is added to the stack. Words that start with vowels get YAY. U becomes UA and I becomes IA. So now again, after singing that verse, then we'll start to plug in the names of the children from my classroom. And so here's some of the names of the kids in my classroom, and here's how we can plug those into the song. So if you want to sing it back to me again, in Pig Latin, names are fun to say. You can say your name in a very special way. You can say your name in a very special way. In Pig Latin, Sam becomes am say. In Pig Latin, Sam becomes am say. Jan becomes and J, and Ann becomes and yay. Jan becomes and yay, and Jan becomes and yay. So now, here's the names of the kids in my classroom, and we'll start plugging those names in. In Pig Latin, names are fun to say. You can say your name in a very special way. In Pig Latin, Katie is ATK. Mateo is Ateo May. Mikey is Ike May. Carla is Arla K. Emma is Emma Ye. That's the way it sounds in Igpayatin lay. So after doing that, then I started taking roll in Pig Latin. So I would call on 80K, and I taught the children how to answer back ear-hey for here. So I have no idea if this is going to work, because I'm doing this in kindergarten with most of the kids are 5, a couple of them are 6. I'd been told by a language expert who's known all over the world that the conventional wisdom was that Pig Latin could not be learned until about the age 8 to 10. But we have done a lot of work with Frere Jacques. We've done a ton of playing with onset rhyme manipulation, with taking the consonants off the front, replacing them, putting them back, and then saying the word, taking the rhyme off the word, replacing it with another rhyme. So this only worked because of all of the preparation that we did with Are You Sleeping, Brother John, and the other phonological awareness songs that I use. So now, instead of replacing the consonant at the beginning of the word, we're going to remove the consonant, put it on the back of the word, and add AY, and now we have to blend it back together again. However, if it starts with a vowel, it's going to be a lot simpler process. So vowel words, all we have to do is put YAY at the end. So I tell my kids, we cheer every time we come to a vowel. So if it's elbow, let's cheer for our elbow. Go, elbow, yay! If it's arm, we can cheer for that. Arm, yay! So now we're speaking Pig Latin. Then when it comes to the consonants, then we need to move them around to the end. So now I can pass out my pages to the children and have them draw a picture on the back of their frame. So here's a frame for the song that goes along with Pig Latin. So let's imagine that we've turned it over on the back, and for the sake of time, I've already drawn a couple pictures here. So I showed you our process for labeling, where I write the rhyme and then the children tell me the onset. Well, we're just going to alter that a slight little bit here. So if I write an O, show me going to the doctor, ah. If I write an M, now Mimi's moving her magic mop for so that says What could this picture be called that ends with Oh, mom. What's it start with? And how do we spell that? With an M, but instead of putting it on the front, let's put it on the back this time. So we write our letter M, and now we need to add AY, and so that says A, so here's Abe skating to the bay. So now we see if we can put that together. The first half of the word says what? The second half says may, and if we blend those two, it says may. Now, there's older kids through 3rd through 5th grade that I was working with. Even if I told them the two syllables at the beginning, they were still having a difficult time blending those two syllables together. So clearly, they're used to seeing words as a whole. They're not seeing parts, and they're not going to advance in their reading until they can see the parts of words. So mom becomes an may. Here's an E. Show me exercising. Here's two S's on this one, so show me surfing to the bay. So that says S. Who can find something in your picture that ends with S? Oh, dress. Now instead, what's the first sound in dress? D for dancing. So let's put that on the end. What's the next sound? R for riding. So let's put that on the end. And then we're going to add AY. So what's the first half of our word? S. What's the second half of our word? Dre. And if we put those together, what is that called? S-dray. So our dress is an S-dray. If we come over here and we put two O's, let's pretend like Woody Woodchuck shook the cookie tree and he got hit in the stomach with a cookie and he goes, ugh. Now let's put an F at the end. What happens if we put and f together? Oof. Now let's put we find the roof. It starts with a R for R, so we put the R there, and then we put our AY. And what would a roof be in Pig Latin? Oofray. So now we could go along and we can label all of those various parts. Then if we have done this on the back of our frame, we can simply turn the frame around and we can transfer words from the back of our page to the front. And then they'll have to translate those words back into Pig Latin. So it would end up sounding like this. All the words in Pig Latin are fun to say. House becomes ouse hey. Mom becomes may. Roof becomes oofray. Dress becomes S-ray. That's the way it sounds in Ig Peatin lay. And now the kids can draw their picture again on the front of their page and go back through and label more parts of their picture. So as we were beginning to do these kinds of activities, I'm thinking in terms of the children becoming more fluent in Pig Latin, and we started to put in some of James Asher's ideas. And he developed the total physical response learning, which is where you give a command and you act out that command as you're giving it. So let's do some of James Asher's total physical response, but do it in Pig Latin. Show me your and hey. Put your and hey on your ed hey. Show me your thay. Put your thay on your o's nay. Show me your idle ingerfe. Put your idle ingerfe on your eek che. Now the next step in James Asher's total physical response is he sits still, but he still gives the same commands. Show me your and hey. Put your and hey on your ed hey. Show me your thay. Put your thay on your o's nay. Show me your idle ingerfe. Put your ingerfe on your outhme. And now my kids are all responding back appropriately as we're doing this. So again, I wasn't sure if my kids would learn Pig Latin, but I figured it's not going to do any harm and they're enjoying the activity. So I'm taking roll in Pig Latin one morning and I come to Katie and Katie gives me this entire sentence in Pig Latin. She says, I am he, ir he, udete, utbe, I me, ishfe, I de, asle, itne. Now, even though I can now do Pig Latin at a certain level and I can read well, I'm still dyslexic. So in a dyslexic brain, we're told that a dyslexic person can learn sounds just like a normal person, but the phonological processor in the brain will never be quite as fast. And so I'll never be a particularly fast reader, but I can be a very good reader in terms of comprehension, which is the most important aspect of reading. So when she said that sentence, she's completely lost me because I can't process sounds that quickly. So I said to my class, who can tell me what Katie just said? And hands went up all around the classroom. I called on a child, and the child says, Katie said, I am here today, but my fish died last night. So now my kids are going home and they're practicing sentences in Pig Latin. So what's happening to their phonological awareness and their automaticity as they're continuing to do this at home for fun? Plus, it's not just happening for the children in my classroom. They're teaching their friends and their brothers and their sisters and their parents and all these other people at home. So learning doesn't end when the kids walk out the door. It's continuing and being reinforced at home. So the kids get really good at their Pig Latin. Now each day, my kids are getting a labeling page at this point in the classroom. And on their labeling page, on one side they have nouns, and they have to put the nouns inside the circles. And then on the other side, on this page, they have verbs. On some of the pages, they have adjectives. So they can either choose verbs from here that I supplied, or they can make up their own verbs and fill out their page. Now, each day when I'm passing these out, we're talking about the words at the top and decoding them. My kids got so good at that, they found it to be boring. And this was a class who loved to be challenged because they had learned from the first week of school that I would come in with challenging information that they could not do, but then I would scaffold it so they could rise to that. And there's nothing more exciting than being able to master something difficult. Mastering something easy doesn't make us feel all that great, but mastering something hard really makes us feel good. So this day they just decided, okay, I'm not going to read those words to you in English anymore. I'm going to read them in Pig Latin. And so I have a recording of some of my kids reading in Pig Latin. And what they were doing, for each word up at the top of their page, they're pointing to it, they're telling me the word in Pig Latin and then translating it back to English and telling me the word in English. So see if you can keep up with my kindergarten students on translating words to and from Pig Latin.
At cray crack, ash cray crash, bay bang, ache bray break, off tray drop, often say softer, ease play please, okay gel, okay cool, in space spin, it dray drip, in ray ring, all way wall, quack. At quay, quack. Ash quay, quack. Quash.
Now you could tell there that some of them are more fluent than others. And so the ones who are doing this at an unconscious level faster than you can think will already be reaching to levels of fluency in their reading so that they're able to think about the meaning and do their word recognition at the same time. The kids that you hear where they're having to slow down and consciously think about the word would not be able to read and comprehend simultaneously. And here's another little guy who has all the skills. He's sounding out the words beautifully, but he's doing it at a very slow conscious level. So he won't have that reading fluency yet. But if he keeps practicing over and over and over again, he'll get faster. The information will travel to his unconscious memory, and then he can become a fluent reader. So here he is.
Phone. File. Where? Wire. Phone.
Okay, so now for the kids who you heard there who were fluent, I set out a bunch of books just to see what would happen. And these books were at the level of Magic Treehouse, at the level of Stella Luna, and I let the child choose whatever book they wanted and then read a bit of that book to me, so because I wanted to test the strategies that they were using when they come to a word that they don't recognize. And the strategy that we're told that good readers use is they use phonological awareness and phonics to decode a word, but phonics is not a perfect system. So some of the words that they decode will sound right, and some of the words they decode will be approximations and they won't sound right. So now they have to check with their listening vocabulary to see how that word is stored in their brain and what pronunciation it has, and then come back and correct it. And because of the way I'm teaching this system from the very beginning of instruction, my kids are starting to demonstrate that skill. So here's a child reading from Ghost Town at Sundown. She comes to a word she doesn't recognize, quickly approximates the word, doesn't sound right to her, backs up, comes back, and corrects the word.
Ghost Town at Sundown, said Morgan. She smiled mysteriously. I have many odd friends, including us, said Annie. Morgan laughed. That's right. How are you, said Jack. I'm still having problems with Merlin, said the enchantress, which leaves me a little time to do my real work. But soon you both will become master librarians, and that will be a big help to me.
So when she came to the word enchantress, she pronounced it as entress. That didn't match a word in her listening vocabulary that fit the context of the story. So she comes back and she corrects it to a word that sounds right and fits the meaning of the story. Now here's another little guy, and he's reading along, and he comes to a word and he quickly approximates the word, but he doesn't correct it. And I would suspect the reason for that is he probably has never heard that word.
Jack and Annie were sitting on their porch reading books. Jack was reading about gorillas, Annie was reading about pilgrims.
So you can hear there, when he came to pilgrims, he pronounced it pilograms, which is a close enough approximation that if that word were stored in his listening vocabulary, he would have a very good likelihood of correcting the pronunciation. And then you have to check with your listening vocabulary as well to see if it's a multi-meaning word, what the meaning is in this context. And so that's the process that we need to have children develop. And again, there's two primary components to reading: word recognition and comprehension. We have two memory systems in the brain. Comprehension has to be done in our conscious memory system, and by practicing over and over and over again with things like our sound substitution songs, with things like Pig Latin, we can gradually teach those skills, transfer them to the unconscious memory system, and produce great readers. And children can do it at any age. As I didn't learn to read till my junior year of college, but I can read complex material now. So that's our ultimate goal. So thank you very much for joining me once more, and I will look forward to seeing you at the next section.